Hi, I'm IKEA, and for today's video I want to give a build showcase on what I consider one of my favorite solo builds, which is a HeartBreaker TechTank. It is a bruiser set up to have a very strong shield and still deal very good damage. And as such, it has quickly become my favorite solo build, and I have shopped it around so much that a lot of people associate it with me, as I've already as well done a masterclass on it. But for today, we're going to keep it to a showcase and try to keep it a little bit shorter. As always, I'll be making extensive use of my build collection, and especially one of the build pictures in there, as this build really only has one variant. As with all build showcases, we'll go over it in two chapters. In the first chapter, we'll go over the build, its layout. In the second part of the first chapter, we'll go into some of the numbers for this build and how it stacks up against some of the other builds. And that will then get followed up in the second chapter, where we'll go into gameplay. I'll take it into mostly some solo stuff, some bounties, some CPs, a little bit of summit, and as well we'll take it into some group content, as mostly to show that that is not really its home, as it is very much, to me, a solo build that works great there. So yeah, let's move on over to the build. And here's the build we'll be discussing here today, as yeah, it is a setup of HeartBreaker together with a layout which I quite often call tech tanks. The word tech tank has origins that predate me, kind of, as well as it is a setup of specific setup of blue cores and a memento and technician and artificer hive. We'll go into that in a second. First, let's discuss HeartBreaker. As yeah, the HeartBreaker at two pieces gives us assault rifle damage and LMG damage. Here we'll be using especially the assault rifle damage. We'll be using it as an AR build. The three piece gives us weapon handling. This is quite handy, especially for the reload speed that it provides, and of course a little bit for the accuracy and stability. And at the four piece, we get what the talent or the mechanic of HeartBreaker is, which is Heartstopper. And that is that headshots apply pulse for 5 seconds. We'll be taking a different approach to getting pulsing to happen, because as well, alongside of that, weapon hits on pulsed enemies add a stack of plus 1% bonus armor and plus 1% weapon damage to pulsed enemies, up to a max of 50 stacks. Meaning that, yeah, every time you hit an enemy that is pulsed, you will get up to 50 stacks of a total of either 50% amp, as it states here. It is weapon damage. It isn't. It is a separate multiplier. It is additive to itself. So this 50% is just a separate multiplier in the same way that Striker works. This 1% armor is also just adding up to itself. We'll be using the chest, especially, as that takes it from 50 to 100 stacks. And this kind of beats any other option we would have in the slot. And that means that no obliterate or spotter variants or glass variants really exist of this setup. Mostly because, yeah, the HeartBreaker chest takes it from a 50 amp to a 100 amp. And that is pretty much unbeatable, except by focus. But would you really for 10% more, basically? And yeah, 2 stacks are lost each second, so it's decaying quite rapidly, a little bit faster as well than Striker in its from 100, because Striker is going from is losing 1 stack up to 50 and 2 stacks up to 200. So this is actually losing all of its stacks in the version that we have it here, is losing all of its stacks in 50 seconds total. Meaning that, yeah, you do have to try to keep your stacks up, although we're also only stacking up to 100, as we don't even have the option, as with Striker, to stack up to 200. Moving on to the next piece, that is the memento. That is integral kind of to tech tanks and to most bruiser builds, as most of the things that the memento can provide are quite strong for especially bruiser builds, commonly in the red-blue variants. Technically, this build is a red-blue-yellow hybrid, meaning that, yeah, we are also even using the skill efficiency that this provides, as that is going into the artificer, as we'll be discussing in a little bit about it. And yeah, picking up the mementos will start building up stacks of memento up to 30 stacks at maximum. The long buff is the cart down here. We'll be mostly using the long buff. We'll be picking up the short buff whenever we can. And both of them together provide bonuses to most of the things that we will be using. So especially with the long buff, we'll be getting 30% weapon damage. That is just additive to the red cores. Skill efficiency, which we'll be going into, especially for us, skill health and skill haste. And of course, as well, the armor regeneration, meaning that in 33 seconds at full, it's a 3% regen, meaning that at 33 seconds, we'll go from empty to full on our armor. As well, alongside that, we have the short buffs. The short buffs are quite handy to pick up, and you'll see me in gameplay as well. Run over and pick them up as I'll be moving forward, because they will provide us with an extra 15 weapon damage coming from 3 red cores. It'll give us a ton of bonus armor, as you'll see, and even as well, the skill efficiency also gets bumped up a little bit by the short buff as well. For our last piece, we'll be taking a piece of Cheska, especially because, yeah, we will be using it for this crit chance. The build itself, as we'll go into the build picture in a second, is quite crit starved, and we really need everything towards that crit chance and crit damage. And that is because, as well, we are setting the build up to become towards having the setup of a tech tank, which is to have memento, 3 pieces with 3 other pieces than the memento, with blue cores, having technician, and having artificer together with a shield. All of this together means that you have a really strong shield that is pretty powerful when powered up. An artificer hive with its own 2 skill tiers, providing it healing with here charge up 42%. And this is just a percentage heal of the health that it has here. And then the rest of the build is geared towards getting as much damage out. And the HeartBreaker version really works well, in my opinion, because it allows you, firstly, as well, to use a flatline quite strongly. It synergizes well with that. It has its own mechanics towards, as well, having bonus armor, which is quite strong. And actually, HeartBreaker is one of the good damage dealers. It is, of course, in its red variant, very much outshined by Striker. Although HeartBreaker isn't that far behind, actually, but mechanically it works basically the same, and because of that, it gets overshadowed. Using it in this way, though, I feel is a quite powerful thing to do with HeartBreaker, as especially having that extra survivability lets this build play hyper aggressively, as I'll show as well. So yeah, let's move on to the skills. And of course, the Artificer is quite core to what tech tanks are. And yeah, that term actually came from someone a long time ago. I've stuck to it as well. And of course, these aren't completely my designs, but they have grown from just iterating upon builds. And of course, nowadays they are a little bit attached to me as I've tried to popularize them, and as I feel they are quite good builds. But yeah, the Artificer is very much core to this build. It is using its healing amount of skill repair to heal the shield. It is doing that every 10 seconds. This is a buff duration that it states here is 10 seconds. There's no way to alter this, so it's always 10 seconds between charges. It basically checks if the skill is buffed, if the buff is active on a skill, and then if it isn't, it will send the charge that way if it's in range. Meaning that, yeah, we cannot alter that in any way, of being 10 seconds or 42% here charged up on the memento. It is 33% without the charges there. And yeah, we have then a shield that together as well with the memento, getting skill efficiency, getting skill health, props it up and makes it quite strong. The two of them together means that you can kind of stand behind your shield and keep firing. You don't have to take cover. You don't have to move away. You can just even move forward towards the enemy as they are firing at you. And that makes it quite handy, especially for solo play. I very much like them as well because while I enjoy glass builds, and that is kind of what I used to run for ages and ages, it is quite a different gameplay to play this over a glass build, because a glass build, you're quite often playing it reactively to what the enemy does. With this, I dictate the pace. One thing I want to make a note of saying here is that, yeah, mod-wise, The mods on the Hive don't really matter. The healing that is a healing mod does not affect the repair of this. This is for the healing Hive only. The duration and the range, of course, do that you receive from Technician mods here, or just if you have the mods of yourself. They are not really useful. One other thing as well, on the shield end, we're going to go with shield health and shield health, the two shield health mods up here. That is especially because, yeah, increasing this amount is also the amount that you heal by. So yeah, you do want to prop that up. Another slot, we'll be taking this 5% holster regeneration. And I just want to as well make a note of saying here that there is, of course, these plus damage bonuses that exist for shields. These are only for the striker shield that comes from Firewall. These are not for any of the other shields, and because of that, they have no purpose in any other shield. So yeah, we'll go with holster regeneration here. Let's move on to the weapons, where we have a Kingbreaker, and the Kingbreaker is also quite core to the HeartBreaker TechTank. Kingbreaker, of course, comes with perfect flatline. It is plus 20% to pulsed enemies. This is a full-on amp. We'll be using as well on this the 2 crit chance mods, the plus 20 rounds, and of course as well the linked laser pointer. We'll be using this linked laser pointer that comes from Technician as our method of pulsing, because while we can headshot to pulse, you can't always headshot. Sometimes enemies are in cover. Not everything has a head to headshot, like warhounds, like turrets, like mini tanks, meaning that this is quite an important tool. We're giving, of course, up a little bit of crit chance for that. But yeah, especially as well, the Kingbreaker is quite core to this because, yeah, that extra 5% amp makes it quite strong. This is a build that can use the Kingbreaker to its full effect, as the Kingbreaker's main issue is that it is very inaccurate, very unstable, doesn't have really great effective range. Its optimal is pretty good, but its actually use range isn't. But this is, of course, a build that can kind of push in and make use of it at close range, sticking it basically into people's faces, and then accuracy doesn't matter much. We'll be pairing that here with, for me, on the HeartBreaker TechTank, with ACS, together with Flatline. Again, Flatline, of course, a very powerful talent for here, as yeah, it is with the normal variant, 15%. And it also applies without conditionality of on kill or such, or trying to have high crit, because as well here we're actually pretty low on crit chances. We'll go into a second. And of course, as the last in the pistol slot, I'll be taking a TDI card custom. Sometimes you can kind of fall back and use this extra skill tier to even squeeze out a little bit more healing on the shield, but usually I don't even do that. I'll just go hide in the corner a little bit and let my shield heal back up. But yeah, a TDI card custom can be useful here, although we'll basically not be using the pistol. Moving on to the specialization, Technician is basically required here. It is locked in. We'll be using the extra skill tier from it towards our Artificer. We'll be using the Artificer, which is only from Technician, so we kind of need that. As well, you could actually, as I don't have that here, but you could set that up, as there is a choice, of course, within Technician to set it to skill damage or skill repair. Or repair skill, technically. You could set it, of course, to skill repair skill and get a little bit more skill repair out of the Artificer Hive. I usually don't, because I also always run drone builds and such, so I just always keep it set to damage. As well, we'll have access to Faraday, and we can actually use the Hive, deploy it at our feet, and get Faraday. We'll also be getting EMP grenades, which are quite useful for a lot of things. So yeah, the layout as it is here, let's go into the stats of it in the build picture. And here we have the build picture as it exists on my build collection. This is 4.14, which is indeed the HeartBreaker TechTank, although 2 exist actually on my build collection. As yeah, I also have one on my alt account, on my second account, as I have 3 now, so there are multiple alts. So I need to clarify. Actually, I have one on the other alt as well, even at this point. Because yeah, it is a build that is core to my usage. I will always want to have one. To point out here, the stat layout as we'll go into it, first I want to discuss that, yeah, HeartBreaker TechTank is kind of easy to put together. It's easier than the Negotiator or the Striker, which are the 2 other variants that I'm recommended. High-end as well exists, but I would especially recommend the gear set ones. And mostly that's down to that we need 3 blue cores on the other gear pieces besides the memento. And HeartBreaker already comes with that, so you kind of only need 1 piece to recore to a red. And it doesn't, of course, matter which of those pieces it is. Just go farming for it. Whatever piece you find, you can just recore the best one for the purpose. If you have find, for instance, in case I found one that had crit chance already maxed out, so I just rerolled the core there. And of course, this Cheska piece as well, as it is here, the mask. This could be, of course, either the mask, the glove, the knee pad, or holster. It doesn't matter which slot it is in. So yeah, you can kind of quite easily put one together. You usually only really need to go farm a memento, as even the weapon-wise, you could get away for a while without a Kingbreaker. Well, of course, a Kingbreaker is pretty easy to farm. Memento is a little bit harder, but still not horrible. ACS you don't per se need, so yeah, it is quite easy to put together. And actually towards the end, we'll even show how I have one set up already on my third account, which is getting along a little bit. And yeah, so that makes this one of the easier setups to make. Crit chance, crit damage wise, we want to have crit damage, a ratio of 54 and 100 for crit chance, crit damage. That comes from having 3 places be crit chance. So in this case, I have the chest. So alongside, of course, the mask will always have a crit chance on it. You would want it to have crit chance, crit damage. Here I have the chest roll be a crit chance, the chest mod be a crit chance, and the memento mod be a crit chance, and the rest all being crit damage. The placement of these doesn't matter, of course. You could have be somewhere else, but yeah, you basically need to have 2 mods, or well, 3 places be crit chance instead of crit damage. And yeah, you kind of need that to get this crit chance up, because of course HeartBreaker doesn't come with its own crit chance. The Kingbreaker as well will eat up 1 crit chance mod of its own for the laser, making it a little bit crit starved, but it still goes along well. And of course as well, it leaves a hole kind of there for the Coyote if you do play these in groups, as sometimes in open world especially you can kind of get away with it. So yeah, let's move on to the numbers where we'll be discussing it. And here's the calculation spreadsheet as I've prepared it for today. It will, of course, as well be linked down below, so you can check it out at your own pace if you want to, or watch along. These are multi-calculators of my design. There's a video on my channel that explains quite in depth how they work and how to fill them in. For here, what you especially need to know is that inputs is happening down here, output is happening up here. All of these percentages are comparing to the build in the top slot. And in this top slot, I've put first here up here 3 builds that are quite commonly what I compare every build against, which is a glass vigilance red, an unbreakable vigilance red, and a obliterate vigilance red. That was actually the different order there, but it's fine. And these are, of course, high-end reds, the classic ones. Most people will kind of know the damages that they deal, making them a good comparison point. And as well here at the bottom, I've put an Obliterate Striker, although in this case still with Elmo, of course, which is at this point kind of last season's model, with a FAMAS, with the damage talent. And as well here, we will be actually accounting for damage talents, as of course we're using the Kingbreaker, and that kind of is important to have that be in that comparison. And then yeah, with the other ones we're using a FAMAS, and in this case I'm putting in a 9%, which is around the number that a strained FAMAS will output on for the striker and the high ends. Jumping into the numbers, we can see, yeah, the glass, of course, and such are comparison points. Here we at the 3 purple ones. The first one is the HeartBreaker TechTank without the memento stacked up. We can see that it is around the point of unbreakable. This is still though with it HeartBreaker being completely stacked. We'll go into what happens when HeartBreaker isn't completely stacked in a little bit, but HeartBreaker is quite easy to stack up to 100. With the ACS, you can get 40 stacks a second if you at maximal value, meaning that you can kind of do this in 2.5 seconds if all of your pellets connect, as especially on HeartBreaker and of course on Striker as well. It stacks per pellet. Meaning that, yeah, it is pretty easy to get this, especially with the HeartBreaker TechTank, because, yeah, it is designed to push in and be close range. The next ones are with the memento full, and then their DTH and DTA number values, as we're just basically putting in and leaving out the DTH bonus of the AR. We can see that, well, with the other ones, we're comparing them all with DTH always active, because it doesn't really matter, because, yeah, if the DTH, or, well, if in this case, with all of them being, the rest of them also being ARs, if we leave the DTH out, they will all drop by that one single multiplier fading away. The reason we are actually having DTA is for in a second. But yeah, once fully stacked, we see that we do gain around 1 million in our DPS output, meaning that is also getting pretty close to the numbers of an Obliterate Vigilance Rat. And in its sustain, it is actually exceeding it already and almost reaching up to the point of glass, and that's especially because of that bonuses that it has towards weapon handling with the set. Here we have actually, yeah, as a tryout and just to compare it a little bit, what would happen if we put the Oreo instead of the Kingbreaker? And this is mostly just to show my irritation a little bit with the Oreo. Because of course, so the Oreo could not have the pulse laser, so it does have its own issues. If you put it in there, you couldn't use it against Warhounds unless you, well, with a red Heartbreaker, you could kind of have a pulse for that, just the skill of pulsing. Here, of course, with the TechTank, your skills are kind of locked in, so you can't really. But yeah, numbers-wise, it is, of course, quite silly. It is exceeding a glass rat. If you're fighting things that only have heads, like some of the factions, you could maybe put in Oreo in here. And especially, of course, in the future, we will revisit a Striker TechTank. And the Striker TechTank has become quite the beast with this thing, as well as the Negotiator TechTank as well. As yeah, of course, Oreo just outclasses a lot of things. But in this case, the Kingbreaker still has its place because we need that pulsing for some purposes. So we do need that to be in there. And yeah, of course, Striker, a full red Striker versus this HeartBreaker TechTank, of course, it outshadows it by a lot. It does close to double the damage of it, especially uncharged. But yeah, that is fine because in this case, we do have more survivability with the HeartBreaker TechTanks. Let's move on to some of the other numbers as they are prepared here. And on this second calculator, I have prepared the Memento and Heartbreaker stacks in different variants. So we are starting off with 0 Memento and 0 Heartbreaker stacks, as we're still comparing to a Glass Vigilance Red. And then going to 30 Memento stacks, 0 Heartbreaker stacks, 0 Memento stacks, 100 Heartbreaker stacks, and then both of them together. If we go by the damage numbers here, we can see that, especially when the everything is empty, 0 Heartbreaker stacks and 0 Memento stacks, it is doing less than half the damage that it can potentially do. So stacking it up is very important, but also we can see that the Memento stacks aren't actually that important for the damage. We are gaining 15-ish% on the damage increase, going from that number to this number. But that is quite still small compared to the Heartbreaker stacks, even on their own. We can see that it is quite a jump up. And then especially, yeah, both of them together actually gives it its power. So once both are fully stacked, it is quite powerful. You do need to stack up Heartbreaker for the damage end of it. That is the important thing to stack up for the damage end. Next up, what we have here is Striker as well. Actually, let's discuss that. So yeah, it is quite strong in comparison still, of course, because it is Striker. This is, of course, a full red Striker versus here where we have a lot more survivability with this Heartbreaker TechTank. We have also accounted actually for talents, weapon damage talents here. Although, of course, nothing's really stopping the Striker as well to, for instance, have the Kingbreaker in there, or maybe another flatline weapon, increasing this more than this 9% that I'm kind of putting in as a simulation of strained on this on a FAMAS on this weapon on this build. But yeah, it quite not much catches up to Striker, and of course as well we now have Ouroboros Strikers, which reach even more silly numbers. But this is, of course, not a full-on damage build. This is mostly to show that, yeah, you can do full damage, but in the gameplay, I will hopefully convince you a little bit that there is some value to survivability, especially for solo, especially for a lot of players that enjoy playing solo. Let's move on to grading. Here I've prepared grade 0, grade 10, grade 20 on the Kingbreaker, and what their damage output increases would be. So in comparison, especially to the glass red, as is in this section, we can see that, yeah, it goes up quite a bit. And actually, once we are grade 20, and of course this is with HeartBreaker and Memento fully stacked, it is getting close to glass numbers, and that is nothing to scoff at. We used to run all content with like glass reds used to be the real damage dealers back then. So not much has changed on the enemy's end. It's mostly been changes to our gear, meaning that especially this is basically on par as a obliterate high-end vigilance red. And yeah, those numbers are nothing to scoff at. Like this can do the same damage as that, although of course it needs to stack more. It doesn't have the same effective range, for instance, especially with the Kingbreaker. But these are decent numbers. As well, here in the black, we have the increase in between each step. So taking the grade 0 as 100%, we can see, yeah, that the increases aren't humongous. It is, of course, grading. It goes into weapon damage, into all weapon damage stat, meaning that it is already quite a diluted pool. And yeah, you don't get the full returns from it per point. But still, going to grade 20 is, 8.7% is also quite a big jump. That is the jump that is, for instance, already as well exists in the higher ends, for instance, going from an obliterate high-end red fully stacked to a glass red. Although, of course, the glass red doesn't have the stack, so it's not a completely perfect comparison. But yeah, it is worth it to get to grade 20, I would say, especially if you enjoy the build as much as I do. And I'll be using a grade 20 Kingbreaker at a point as well. Let's move on to this last calculation here. And this last one is the shield. And it is, of course, not a damage calculation, so we're going to go into its numbers. Here we have 0 memento and 30 memento stacks on each of the rows. We can see that the artificer number increases as we have it in game as well. Same for the shield health. The skill efficiency, of course, gives all 6 of the yellow stats. In our case, especially skill repair, skill haste, and skill health, as it goes into the shield, are quite important. Going off of this number, this is of the artificer, of course, and this is a flat healing, and it is, of course, in relation to what skill it is healing. In this case, with the shield, taking 42% heal from this means that it's healing without the memento charged up. It is healing for 1.57 million. Once the shield increases in its skill health and also the artificer in its repair skill, it goes up to 2.7 million. So the memento is especially important for our shield and how much it heals, because yeah, it doesn't increase our damage by a lot, but it does increase our effectiveness with tanking by quite a lot. And this is, of course, every 10 seconds that it sends out a charge whenever it detects that the shield is no longer buffed. If we take that to 1 second increments, we can see that it is, once fully charged, it is 270k regen. You could actually compare this kind of to armor regen in game, although of course armor regen is just on yourself. This is only on the shield, but 270k is a value that you cannot really reach with armor regen, and here we are reaching it, although of course on the shield, so it is not the person itself. The shield, of course, can be destroyed, can be disrupted, a lot of things can happen to it, but this value is so much higher than armor regen could ever really be, and this is really what makes TechTanks work for me. So yeah, let's jump into the game and have a look, last look at the build, and then we'll take it into some content. And yeah, here's the build as we'll be using it, and of course, I've gone and grabbed my grade 20 Kingbreaker as well, of course, to have one. For parts, I won't be using it. We'll be doing some bounties and some CPs and some summit before we go into some group content. For each of the segments, we'll be doing 2 bounties. For one, I'll be using a normal Kingbreaker, then the grade 20, and I'll just be sure to tell it. Because yeah, it does make quite the difference to the build. Of course, as well, my build is completely optimized, and even though the build picture, for instance, was missing some of the crit chances and crit damage mods, at this point, those have been rectified at this point and maxed out quite severely. So yeah, this is the build at its full potential. One last thing I wanted to say as well, the watch points are quite important to this build. You really need that crit chance and crit damage to get it up to full, especially that crit chance, but it benefits a lot from all of the other stats, but it also even benefits from, especially for instance here, repair skill, which usually people pick as last. And of course, yeah, all the other stats kind of help it as well, including armor. But yeah, it is somewhat of a watch-reliant build, so do keep that in mind, and especially as well that, yeah, mine is set up to be completely full, and sometimes you kind of have to build up to that, especially as well. I know them well, so I'll be playing them pretty aggressively. Starting out, play it maybe a little bit less aggressive than I am, and then slowly build it up. So yeah, let's go do a bounty without a degraded weapon. And here we're heading in with without the graded, indeed, weapon. I've picked a position where these bounties will be. This is a character which has a quirk, and we'll go into that in a little bit, as they do not have any of the side missions completed, and that lets us do some quirky things with bounties, which I'll show off. Although all of their bounties as well will end up in the open world with most places, which has happened here as well. Meaning that, yeah, we're fighting a bunch of other stuff as well, or will be likely fighting a bunch of other stuff as well. And yeah, this is kind of the loop of the HeartBreaker TechTank. You run in, you stack up with the HeartBreaker, and even sometimes take it to the face, but that's fine because you just tank it. I'm not charged up yet. The difference in tech tanks when the memento is charged up, as we showed in the numbers as well, is I see a rusher coming my way as the icon, but yeah, they luckily went the different way. So I'll just get that stuff out of the way and start moving towards them. The memento is especially important for our shield. The Heartbreaker stacks are especially important for our weapon. As here, for instance, I killed that guy pretty slow, and that's because I'm not stacked up on the memento at all, really. I have some, luckily as well, I have some randoms allies as well here. You usually, yeah, you sometimes, depending on what you get, might help, although quite often it's enemies. Here I am going to take the time to stack up the full. There were a few two enemies there, so I fell back a little bit. I mean, actually even going to show my back to that LMG, so he shoots me and not my shield. I'm going to wait for the shield. On the buff bar, you see the icon of the Artificer. The shield will be healed once the Artificer's buff is removed, and then the Artificer will send another charge towards it and heal it back up. I'm gonna leave that LMG alive, mostly because, yeah, I kind of want to show a thing that I feel a lot of people struggle with LMGs, especially of the outcast variety. And that's kind of the thing that I feel tech tanks do pretty well. Explosions would destroy my shield. I'm quite lucky that that one there died when they did. But yeah, I'm gonna get the attention of this LMG. Hopefully they'll shoot at me. But yeah, even uncharged, you can kind of stand in front of an LMG for a while. And that's a lot handier than it would appear. Although, of course, here I lost it. Mostly because it's not charged up. And in a second, or in maybe further content, we'll show a little bit what the shield can do once it is actually fully charged up. Because it is a lot stronger. But also, it is back now. So, even if you lose it, the disorient is annoying, but it'll be back in a few seconds. So you can just go and hide, get it back, and get going from there. We are only halfway charged up, so actually after this enemy, as I blow up their backpack, I'm gonna swap over to here as all three bosses spawn together. Especially don't want to get hit by her, because she will have explosive arrows, and that will actually cost me my shield. I'm gonna use the CC that these guys provide for themselves, to use it on themselves. And yeah, on names it regenerates even, and
target neutralized.
A bounty, of course, isn't too big of an issue for this build. But what we're gonna do now is, yeah, grab our loot. I wish actually these NPCs weren't here, because they're actually making it a little bit easier even. But it's fine. I am going to a place that I know because I know the boundaries of this mission. And yeah, to show this character's world, they haven't done any of the side missions. There's no places for the bounties to easily go. For instance, the bounty that I actually just pulled there was from Eastmall. I'm going to actually go up against Black Tusk here because usually Black Tusk are considered, I would consider them as well, a little bit harder. So we're going to do one of them. And really, the only position that the game has to put these bounties is in that same spot. Some people will know this, of course, as well from, for instance, in Constitution Hall. But yeah, because it only has this position to put it, it always goes there from these two zones. And you can, of course, use that kind of as I'm here by running away a little bit. So I knew that the boundary, which is the gray area on the minimap, as it is showing there, was up to here. So yeah, I just went a little bit outside of it and then started it. And this, of course, can be used kind of for grinding purposes. There are other positions where you can do the same thing. For instance, as well, the mansion to the east, where quite a lot of the bounties in this zone go to. You can kind of do that there as well. Or in this case, this character is set up to do it. Although, of course, this character wasn't set up to do it. We didn't know this was a thing until much later on, or with a little bit of trial and error and like, oh, hey, why is the bounty continuously spawning nearby? And then we figured it out, kind of. But yeah, it's not really per se worth it to set up a character in this way, but just to show this kind of quirkiness. There are sometimes quirks that you can make happen. Dogs are really nice to stack up on. And as well, dogs would be the thing that, for instance, if we were running an Ouroboros, we could run an Ouroboros on, of course, any build. It is a weapon. It doesn't really care what build it is on. On HeartBreaker, of course, we would need to headshot with it to pulse at that point because we can't have the pulse laser. If we weren't running a TechTank variant, we could, of course, just have a pulse or just a spotting drone or remote pulse or something like that to do it for us. But in this specific case with the TechTanks, against Black Tusk, for instance, that dog would not have a head. But the Ouroboros still does so much damage that it might actually, even unpulsed, do more damage. Actually, it won't. It does need 100 stacks of HeartBreaker to actually beat the Kingbreaker in this case. But it would, yeah, on everything else, it would easily beat the Kingbreaker. Although, of course, range is a thing as well still. Because one of the things that this build does for me, as for instance, Hunter's Fury doesn't, is if I want to, if I need to, I can disengage, I can run away, I can turn around and fight from range. And range is quite often a useful thing. You can, by putting yourself further away, you can put everything in front of you. As for instance, here we have aggroed something on the street. So I'm just gonna pull away a little bit, go away, go over here, be further away. And a Hunter's Fury, to me, can't really do this as easily. I'm gonna kill that purple because he's in a healing box, and then I'm gonna go after this guy.
Explosive trap.
Because yeah, these builds, the HeartBreaker TechTank and all the TechTanks really are kind of like claymores, front towards enemy. Because yeah, the shield is its important part. But of course, with HeartBreaker, yeah, whenever, and with Memento as well, every time I'm picking up these things, I am getting some bonus armor. And what I'll often use the bonus armor for is to close the distance. So I might even, if I'm like, have a few enemies killed along the way, what I would do is run into this, grab this, use it to get closer to the enemy even without my shield. Because you've got bonus armor, you can use it as just a resource. And I quite often use it as that. As yeah, for instance, as well here, I'll run in. Even if the enemy shot me, I had a few, I had some bonus armor. Here, the explosion caused me to lose my shield, and that is quite often the main thing that will cost you your shield is if something explodes nearby. I'm just going to kill that mini tank. This is the not have it shoot at me. And we have one more wave, although it's not spawning here. But yeah, my shield is already back, just because the Memento as well is providing skill haste. And here we're doing it without any directives. In a second, with the control points, we'll add in some directives as well. This build as well can deal decently well with that. I'm gonna just stand in front of a bunch of enemies. I'm gonna shoot that dog. I'm gonna chain this one. I'm gonna kill this one because he's most likely to flank me. Gonna shoot out the backpack there. But yeah, you can kind of stand in front of a bunch of enemies, especially on solo. The scaling for enemy damage also exists. It's not just their health, it's also their damage. I'm gonna go for the quick kill on the back on that heavy. I killed him without breaking his chest, and I'll show in a second I did that as well for the heavies. Gonna just close the distance to the sniper and just be in her face, not let her snipe me. And that's kind of the thing why I do enjoy these kind of builds. I used to run glass reds quite a lot. But you kind of, if you had a sniper like that and you had a bunch of enemies around them, you kind of had to take cover, close the distance, take some pot shots, wait for them to do a thing, to maybe CC them with foam or something, and then kill them. With this, I just run at them. I just run at them and hope for the best. And usually, most of the time, it does work. And the reason this heavy died without his chest breaking is that there is a hole in the back where there is no armor and you can shoot them directly into the health. It is basically where I'm aiming there. It is behind their healing box. If you shoot them there, as is for instance the case here as well, as you'll see in a second, there the chest broke. So the chest was actually not broken, but I killed him with shooting him in the back of the chest. Let's move it on over to some CPs, and we'll discuss the build a little bit more further, and also with some directives on. And here we are heading towards an CP, but along the way I found some friends in the way of a world named. I'm gonna just rush them down and kind of show how aggressive you can kind of play this and why I kind of enjoy that. Because yeah, normally you would kind of, especially with these groups, there's a group of 5, they all aggro together, there's always a named with them that sometimes does funky stuff, and you kind of need to deal with that. And here I don't, I just run at them. And here as well, I have a bunch of bonus armor, so even if he were to shoot me in my way in, once I hit armor, I can then bring out my shield. I use the bonus armor to get into position. We're gonna go do demolition site, especially because I want to show a trick there as well. Might as well use these opportunities as well to show some tricks. I'm gonna sneak in a little bit, not engage from too far away, and I'm gonna go be in their face. I'm a little bit lower on ammo than I would want to be, but will likely end up fine. Yeah, I'm gonna rush in, just stack up on this. What I could do as well is use my pulse just to pulse several things and make sure that I kind of know what I'm heading into. But as well, you only live 70 billion times because respawning is infinite, so who cares? No obituary will be written about your character. You'll only forget that you've ever played the game. And in a few years, think back of, oh yeah, I played that game. That's actually how characters end. As we go into a little bit of philosophy there. But yeah, I'm gonna pick up these memento stacks. I am actually here charged up. I've also grabbed the grade 20 weapon, as actually have. With the 2 bounties, we did them both without the graded weapon. The graded weapon, of course, gives me another close to 9%, 8.7% more damage. That is very much noticeable. It is quite noticeable on stuff dying, basically, close to 10% faster. And that does matter because they stack up over time. If you can kill an enemy before they get away, before they get around the corner, like they did there, then yeah, I'm focusing down her because yeah, those cars annoy me. This guy's a shield. He'll just be in my face. He's basically my counterpart on their end. My shield is close to breaking, but there my charge came in and fixed that right up. I killed the owner of that turret there, so he's also getting shot in the back by that turret. Yeah, quite easily we cleaned it up out here. You may have noticed I didn't call them in. I specifically didn't call them in. And that is because with a lot of CPs, especially a lot of the DC ones, the early ones especially as well, is we're going to go kill that group over there as well. Actually, you know what I'll do? One of the tools you have, it is not the greatest tool, but it does work. And that is the way to use it, which is to target enemies, aim it straight up, as long as there's no ceiling, of course, and then use it. You can use it from here and there just to clean out a wave. I could have just also gone and shot them, but, you know, you might as well use all your tools. In a second, all of the enemies will spawn from one sewer grate, and that makes it super easy to go and spawn camp them. It is actually a lot easier with several different other builds than this, but this build can do it as well.
Reinforcements.
We're gonna run in. I should have grabbed ammo maybe. I'm gonna toss an EMP grenade there. It's not gonna do much because these are elites and I'm not gonna be staggered by it. But these are also hyenas and they provide their own CC in the form of this orient, especially on the rushers. And I'm gonna stack up to full. Once I am full, I will swap to the Kingbreaker. The Kingbreaker is a much more usable weapon, especially once you're stacked up, just because it doesn't do more damage than the ACS, but it does more consistent damage than the ACS, because yeah, the ACS will miss a shot here and there. I need to kill this last guy before the next wave spawns. And they all spawn from here. You may already be seeing a pattern of what is going to happen to all of them, which is that they come up and I kill them. Now, of course, an Eclipse actually, for instance, can do this just as well and even easier because yeah, they'll just set everything on fire, they'll put a Stinger Hive underneath them, and everything will die as well. But yeah, just to show this one, because yeah, there are a lot of CPs where it is valuable to not call them in, because you would never see this if you have called them in, because yeah, then you're usually fighting them from up there. But here, fighting them at their spawn is a lot faster, as we, for instance, here as well, are just waiting for our allies to reach this point before we actually capture this CP, because we haven't actually captured this CP yet. As our allies need to, you know, get their slow backsides to here. And we actually won't wait for them. Let's move on to the next CP. And here we are at the gate in the northern part of Manhattan. I'm going to head in here and do this CP. I have this time turned on 3 directives, cool skills, fog of war, and no regen. All 3 don't really bother this build much, especially cool skills does not really care about the artificer hive and the shield, mostly because the artificer doesn't actually need actual charges on it to be used for the healing of the shield when it's on your back. So as long as it's not deployed, it will actually, even when it doesn't have any charges and is completely empty, because cool skills will reset it every time you pull out your shield, it won't actually affect it towards its ability to heal. It will just heal your shields. No regen, of course, can be completely negated, and I'll likely show that after this fight, or maybe in the summit in a second. And fog of war, you just have to deal with. We have the ability to pulse with our weapon, so you can kind of aim towards an area and just, you know, pulse them like that. So there is that ability, and for the rest of it, you just kind of have to deal with having a little bit of awareness. Listening as sound is, of course, a really good way. And yeah, I just pushed in here, went after their spawn points, which are up here. I think as well we have aggroed another patrol as well, as I saw even more exclamation marks go up. But yeah, I can play it super aggressively. I did get to charge up a little bit of memento charges coming into here, mostly just patrols along the way. So yeah, I wasn't completely empty. And that's kind of what you do want to do for CPs, especially if you want to be aggressive, because yeah, once again, memento is very important for the shield and the artificer and the amounts that they heal by. Just checking that I actually killed everything I feel I did. That extra patrol. If they were around, they are dead at this point. And yeah, I'm gonna head towards the gate, be close to their spawn points. They spawn from over there-ish from a building, over there-ish from a building. And yeah, I want to be a lot closer. This isn't a long-range fighter. It can, if you need to, you can fall back a little bit. But yeah, it's not a sniper or anything. Pinging over there, they aren't spawned there, so likely they're on the other end. The rain is making it a little bit harder to see. Also for the enemies, as yeah, NPCs as well lose accuracy and the ability to easily spot you, especially during rain and sandstorm and stuff like that. I did see exclamation mark go up over there, so likely there is something over there as well that has joined this fight. But I'm just gonna focus on the CP enemies. And especially with 3 directives, it does decently well. Of course, there are other builds that can pretty easily deal with 5 directives, and that likely as well would be partially something that I will showcase in my next build showcase, as that will likely be about the hotshot determined build, which is of course ability to have 5 directives. This season especially, this build can kind of do 3 directives. All of the tech tanks can kind of do these 3 directives. They can't deal with pistolero, which this season is active, but usually as well with any of the ammo ones they really can't deal well with. The other one of this season is special ammo, and special ammo is not one that I would pick. With factions like these, it's not an issue. The Rikers will have bleed rounds, the Cleaners will have fire rounds, but especially disorient rounds from hyenas are very annoying. And same for EMP rounds are very deadly from from Black Death. But yeah, there we cleared out another CP pretty fast, pretty easily, as that's kind of what this can do with 3 directives in this case. Let's move it on over to the summit and we'll discuss a few more things about this build. And here we've arrived at the summit. We're waiting at the elevator. I just briefly wanted to discuss some of the directives that this build can deal with. On the summit, and this is kind of one of the reasons I enjoy running this build in the summit, it can pretty easily deal with 6 directives, the 6 that are set there, which is no regen, hard to earn, fragile armor, fog of war, cool skills, and ragers. The others in ammo hoarders and pistolero are kind of difficult to deal with. This build doesn't really have anything to negate its ammo usage, except that it's using 2 weapons quite effectively, and that one of them is quite the ammo hog in the ACS, and then the other has pretty good ammo economy in the TKB or the Kingbreaker in this case. Scavenging skills isn't too hard to deal with. You do need to keep in mind to like put your shield away and then pick up one of the pickups at the end of each room, which is kind of annoying. That's why I keep it off. And yeah, special ammo, as I discussed earlier, some of the factions special ammo, especially hyenas with their disorient and Black Tusk with their disrupt rounds. Both of them can, even if they hit your shield, their special ammo will apply. So you'll get disoriented or you'll get disrupted. Both of them can be deadly. Flame rounds and bleed rounds, you can actually, if they hit the shield, they will not apply to you. But yeah, usually I run around with these 6 directives on, and let's actually go do that here as we'll go up to floor 57, which is just the checkpoint that I had available here. We'll do 3 floors and a boss floor, and we'll just discuss the playstyle of this thing. Because I feel in here is one of the places where the run and gun builds really come into their own. As it's very small rooms, there is a lot of tall cover to go in between. Hunter's Fury builds already did really well, of course, in Summit. But I feel especially as well that a HeartBreaker TechTank like this can do pretty well as well. I have lost all my stacks, of course, meaning that yeah, we have to stack up from empty. But fast traveling to a different map will do that as we have to the summit here. But yeah, I'll quickly go around, get a few charges in. Actually, yeah, that's a good one to discuss there, as that is one of the very few bleeds that actually does go through shield, which is the chainsaw. It will bleed you even if it hits your shield, which is not true for many of the other bleeds. So here we are fighting some of the underground faction, which ambush people in the summit. I feel they're a little bit above ground here, but it's fine. And yeah, especially in summit where you have going from room to room, and you just want to, quite often for me, I do enjoy doing the 30 floors of summit weekly. Although in my case, Descent has kind of taken up a lot of the time that I would spend in summit quite often. Because I quite often actually enjoy summit, especially solo. I would put on something, something long from YouTube, as while I enjoy making long videos, I also enjoy watching long videos. That's kind of why I'm okay making videos that are that long. Because I'm looking around the show as well for the key as well. That's why I'm going into the corners. And yeah, I did see these people standing here, but yeah, they didn't see me, so it's fine. I will stack up mostly to full. Actually, I will go even a little bit higher and stack all the way to full, making sure to make the most use of it. Of the ACS first, and yeah, once I am actually full, the Kingbreaker comes out. The ACS on short range actually technically will have competing damage with the TKB, but with the TKB I can do things like that, which is to go mostly for headshots. And yeah, this is like one of the things I was talking about of just walking towards an enemy And yeah, we've all had the moments of being a striker or a glass rat or something. And there's especially outcast LMGs have that habit. Just setting up and kind of pinning you down. Sometimes there's like 3 of them in a row. And it's very, I feel, liberating to just rush them down. We still have secure the area active. And yeah, I'm just here, just running around and letting them shoot at me just to reveal the position. I'm gonna get a little bit closer in between the reloads, just so I have a little bit more effective damage on them. But there as well, like, if you were Hunter's Fury, which is kind of what I would run before these in Summit, there I would have had to close the distance. I would have, because the SMG in the hand or the shotgun would not have the effective range to that. And also you would want the bonus, that 15-meter range bonus, to be active. This doesn't have that per se. It only has really the accuracy issues with the TKB being a little bit of a jumpy gun. But I feel I can pretty easily keep it on decent enough target at like 25 meters. Anything beyond that and it becomes a little bit more of a, you know, copium. But yeah, even here, we even get a free exotic out of it. A backfire, I'm not actually even going to pick that up. It will become an exotic component, which will likely go into many Ouroboroses. And as yet, those are, of course, hopefully going to join my inventories pretty soon. You can't vault over there, turns out. But also that is fine, because this guy wants to die. And this is the reason why I do enjoy these builds. They are very run and gunny. You could, of course, with even a Heartbreaker with Memento, or even a Red with a Memento, you could have like a little bit of this playstyle, but you can be this aggressive. And I do enjoy being this aggressive. And here again, where with Hunter's Fury, here I'm also not doing a great job of killing them, but I do, in fact, eventually kill them, as I had to elongate that sentence quite a bit. But I'm still closer to the door. That's the reason I didn't want to go all the way over there, because that was already, like, would have to run all the way back. And yeah, Summit for me is still, it is an enjoyable thing, and especially for instance when, a lot of people think that Summit has completely lost its value with Countdown. I would disagree. Summit is a lot better XP, and Summit is a lot better with global events, because it can do global events. Also, it has a legendary, which I feel a lot of people seem to forget. And legendary Summit can be quite useful, because yeah, you can set your own target at, and get whatever you want to get from a legendary Summit. And legendary Summit as well, where in the normal legendaries, the amount of enemies doesn't change. Their health and armor does, but the amount of enemies doesn't. So they are actually quite difficult solo. Most rooms in legendary Summit will just have 2-3 enemies, and then you kill them, and then 2-3 enemies. Meaning that it is a lot easier actually for legendary, especially solo. And I have ran HeartBreaker TechTanks and actually other TechTanks in Legendary for solo Summit quite often, although I usually prefer better in groups as well, as you get a lot more enemies, you get a lot more drops out of it. Luckily, we get the key as well, as we're already on floor 59. We'll finish off this 3-floor section, and then we will head into the boss fight and do that as well, just to show it a little bit. We'll grab ammo. I'm not that ammo starved, mostly because, yeah, the TKB is pretty good at ammo conservation. It is doing a decent amounts of damage per shot. Meaning that, yeah, per mag, it is actually doing really well for damage per mag. I will try to kill that dog. Although, I did not know the dog would do that. Yeah, it needs to get up the ladder to get out, and having seen it now there, it makes sense that it does that like that, but also it does not make sense. Because yeah, those warhounds are loot warhounds. Can't kill them. You get loot out of them, quite often targeted out of them, and making it a little bit easy. As well, I get to just dictate pace, run in, not care too much, because even if I get surrounded a little bit, I can get away with it. You will still sometimes die, of course. But In most cases, if you know what you're doing, you can predict when hard fights are. And this is very much a build, not set up for the easy times. It isn't set up for the times where you're just, you know, fighting easy fights. It is set up for the times where you're fighting hard fights, especially like if you have a named or two be in front of you, for instance, with a bounty and a few enemies. It's kind of set up for those moments because the shield is often not required, but there are moments where you where having the shield is of great value. For instance, when there is a named, especially with, for instance, with the glass red, we've also all had that feeling of being a striker red or glass red. You don't have a good way of dealing with names. They have a large enough health and damage or health and armor pools that you can't instantly kill them. You're kind of stuck fighting them slowly. With this, I don't. And that's kind of the reason I like it. Even though it will be slower, of course, if you can play glass red well, you can be faster than this build. But there are moments where you'll be slower just because you'll be stuck fighting something that you can't easily deal with, like a name. Here as well, we'll have a named once again. I'm just going to close the distance, get in their face, and not one mag them, because I'm not stacked on HeartBreaker, which I should be a little bit more, which I'm going to do now, actually. Because if I had stacked actually to full there, I would have one magged named quite easily. Unless it is an LMG one or a heavy. And especially in the summit, I feel it is pretty okay as well, because we have the ability to have 6 directives here. And it can deal with as well the many of the challenges pretty well, because as well something like Armor Adra or Guardian of not going down. I can't go down because I don't have a hive, so if I go down, the three floor section resets. But also, if I play it a little bit slower, I'm basically guaranteed to not armor break. I'm gonna grab whatever is out of this chest, looking at it briefly, deconstructing it, and let's go do a boss room with this. As well, actually, I'll briefly check if I have any challenges left for them, but actually I don't. I have actually used most of the challenges already during this run. But yeah, let's go fight this boss room. And as well, this build can, of course, door camp pretty effectively, although of course something like a Hut Hunter, a Regulus can of course clear a door. It can't tank a door, but it can just make everybody disappear in one shot. Everybody pulls out their trampolines and jumps around. With this, in a second we'll have everybody spawning from one door over there except for the named. Gonna stack up on this guy, also blowing up his backpack, making everybody else scatter. I really don't want shock rounds, which this guy will put on the ground. Well, I want them. I don't want the enemy to have them. Let's be clear about that. When this guy dies, the boss spawns. The boss spawned over there as well. I'm gonna start pushing towards that door and trying to spawn camp it in a second. I really want this guy's backpack. And I really... Yeah, sorry, missed the name. I'm coming through. I really don't want this guy's shock rounds to be active. To the point that I will just destroy them. Just so not somebody else either gets them either. I'm gonna kill all of the non-named, and then...
Assault turret detected.
He put out an assault turret. Didn't see really where it went, but there's a wall behind me. There's that wall behind me, so he can't shoot me. And I'm going to attempt to go and camp this door. And that will pretty easily happen, I feel. Because, actually, well, that was the last... we are only at floor 60. And, yeah, difficulty does increase going up in floors. This is kind of the halfway point. we are mostly of the halfways. But yeah, even there, yeah, we did 3 floor and a boss section pretty easily. Let's move it on to some... I am actually going to put this for a little bit into some group content. We'll likely do the latter half of a mission. And I'll just basically discuss where, while it does decently well in solo content. In group content, I would pick something else. But yeah, let's discuss it there. And yeah, here we're heading into the boss fight of Grand Washington Hotel. I've actually recruited a few of my regulars from the stream. Let me just grab some builds, although one of them is a Fi and buffing us as well, so red Fi is nice. And yeah, we're gonna try to do the boss fight here, and also in the end kind of look at the stats and see how we did. In groups, I find tech tanks, well, still useful. I sometimes grab them in groups, especially if I'm with a very weak group. I can kind of guarantee mission completion on almost all missions with this build, just by outlasting everything. Although at that point I have to kind of play it super slow. Much more regularly, I would choose to pick something as I'm being chased by heavy as a Eclipse, especially of course for me in groups, which is much more useful, I feel, than any blue build really in groups. Mostly because they provide their own damage as well. Well, this build does decent damage, and towards the end stats we'll likely see as well that I won't be doing too horribly. Being an Eclipse and providing damage that way together with CC is in the end a lot more reliable. Because here as well, I'm only really dealing with enemies on this end. I'm kind of keeping them busy over here on this end. With Eclipse, I could set most of the waves on fire, and because of that, CC a lot more, or actually, well, keep enemies a lot more engaged with me. Mostly that is down, of course, to the aggro mechanics in Division are very much based upon damage, and this build does decent damage, but it will get out damaged by a Striker. A Striker can pull aggro away from me very easily. We got an exotic there, likely a Merciless, and yeah, likely it likely was true, as that will get turned into an exotic component. And let's go do the final fight here as well. As we'll head through. I'm leaving some loot behind and stuff. That's fine. As yeah, we'll head on through. We'll give my allies the time to loot though. We need to. And yeah, we'll do this final part, get the final stats. In groups, yeah, there is not much value to these, especially, of course, if there's already, for instance, an Eclipse in the group. They're already doing things like CCing everything. And then I would much rather be in a full damage dealer so that I'm dealing full damage, because if everything's already on fire with a Fire Eclipse or foam with a Foam Eclipse, yeah, then what is the purpose of this build? Just doing less damage there. Because if nothing's shooting, the purpose of it kind of falls. But of course, in solo, everything is shooting at you. Everything's also aggroed towards you, and then that matters quite a bit. I'm gonna help with some of the reds over there, and then with this, we break through the door. And I'm just gonna let them come through a little bit, just so my allies can shoot them at them as well. I gotta push into there and kind of kill them all, though. First, I will actually with this one, just because of getting away.
Manny, is Odessa on the line?
And yeah, here as even more rounds come towards me in this case. We'll wait for the final stats and have a look at them, and likely afterwards we'll head into the conclusion of this video. Damage-wise, I'm surprised that I kind of took it, although this is very much a close-range mission. The more wide the mission becomes, it can deal damage. It is okay at dealing damage. But it will not compete, especially, for instance, with an Oreo Striker or something like that. I'm playing it here through the entire mission, kind of like with that boss fight, hyper-aggressively, and trying to get the most out of it. And then it's okay-ish. But it usually ends up just okay-ish, especially if, for instance, here, of course, one of my allies in Muddy was also providing 5 buffs to the rest of us. So they're kind of, doing the less damage themselves and providing it towards us. But yeah, let's head into the final conclusion, and I'll give my final thoughts on this. And to conclude this video, The HeartBreaker TechTank is a build that I very much enjoy. I have made a lot of use of it. It even exists across all my accounts, as I have 3 now. I have one on my main account on the character. I have multiple tech tanks on my main account. On my second account, I really only have the HeartBreaker TechTank because I do feel strongly that it is quite the strongest one. Although currently with the Oreo coming in, the Striker TechTank and the Negotiator TechTank have gotten a big upgrade because they synergize much better with that. The HeartBreaker doesn't, so maybe it'll fall behind, but also before I do any showcases on them, although of course a masterclass exists for them, so if you're interested in knowing more about them, you can go watch the masterclass. I want to keep off of it for a little bit, see if the devs alter anything about it, just so it's not outdated the second I bring it out. But yeah, it is this one. It is still quite my choice. Whenever I am solo and need to get something done, I will grab a tech tank. If I need to get something done quickly, I will grab the HeartBreaker tech tank. And yeah, that is its biggest praise I could give a build, is that I will go out of my way to choose it because I have a lot of things I could choose from. Although, especially, for instance, for fast leveling, which will be other builds which will be showcased pretty soon, as the next showcase, for instance, will be the Hotshot. This build cannot do what, for instance, a Hotshot Determined can do with 5 directives. But for me, that is quite okay because I do not enjoy that build. I do not enjoy Hunter's Fury Headhunter. I do quite enjoy a build like this that lets me just run around like a headless chicken and be aggressive and get away with it. And yeah, that very much concludes this build showcase. It is, to say it briefly, it is a bruiser with a bite, and a strong one, and comes highly recommended. I've recommended it to many players. The only people that have waned away from it are usually because it doesn't fit their playstyle. It is an acquired playstyle, and you do have to learn it for a while. And that's also, if you're interested in knowing more about it, I go much more in depth, especially in the masterclass than even this build showcase, which is also way too long. But yeah, that very much concludes this video. For my next video, as we'll have a Hotshot come in as my allies will spend some time trying to get through my shield, although of course no friendly fire exists. We'll go into Hotshot and Determined, as well. I waned away from that build for quite a while. It was very much a build that is good for getting 5 directives in and getting the kills out. And my next video following this one will actually be only tips on group play. So yeah, I hope you join me for those, or over on Twitch, where I'm streaming quite often. And as always, have a good night.